So as we approach the weekend, Tyler, a lot of breaking news that we've seen, especially for fantasy football lineups. We're going to have some tough decisions. So I want to go over like some start, sit type things and talk about players that are probably the most questionable pieces heading to the week. One of those teams this weekend has a lot of those, the Indianapolis Colts. We have quarterback Anthony Richardson, who's been out. We had Flacco in there. Presumably, we're going to see Anthony Richardson take back over at quarterback. At the running back position, Trey Sermon has been banged up. So we have Goodson in the backfield, but it looks like Jonathan Taylor is fully out. Trey Sermon should be the guy for this weekend. Just something to note. We also have the receivers. Josh Downs had missed practice up until Friday. He participated in practice. But we also have the receiver thing we need to look at. And if Michael Pittman is going to be available, he said he is now going to play through a back injury that was supposed to keep him out week to week. Tyler, this Colts team, man, I literally can't even gauge it because there's so many question marks at each position, bro.
Yeah, this is a tough one. And it also just throws on fact, like, obviously we talked about this last time. We would like Josh Downs quite a bit if it was Joe Flacco. We'll see with Anthony Richardson because last time we saw him was that Pittsburgh game. And in the beginning of the Pittsburgh game, it was just, I think, 1 or 2 series. He was looking decent against a pretty good defense, but it's also a very small sample size. So this, I would say, and it's even tough with like Trey Sermon because last week him and Goodson basically split snaps. Trey Sermon was right around like 56% of the snaps, and Goodson was right around like 40-something% of the snaps. It was basically a near 50-50 split in terms of snaps. So how I would approach this situation, though, I would say out of all the guys, I'm still going to lean with Anthony Richardson, obviously. Like, if I drafted A Rich, I'm going to be playing A Rich unless I...
You got him top 12 for you? Like, is he still top 10,
he's top 12,
or is he more like top 15 now?
He's top 12 still because there's a couple quarterbacks. I'm pulling in my rankings right now. I'm going to say he's actually 12.
There's some like tough matchups this week, quarterback wise.
And there's, I want to say it here. I'm pulling up right now. Yeah. So, he's actually 14 because you have Goff. Because I really do like Goff. He gets the Dallas game.
Yep.
That should be a very high scoring game. I really like that one. Kirk Cousins, they get Carolina. So decent one there. And then maybe over CJ Stroud. But the one guy that I have question marks is Josh Allen. But anyways, so I have a rich borderline quarterback one. I'd still be playing him unless I, drafted, I don't know, Jaden Daniels or something like that. But I'd be playing him with the wide receiver situation. I mean, I was never very high on Michael Pittman to begin with. He's banged up. He's a low A dot kind of guy. I just don't see him being super viable.
I feel like for Michael Pittman, this feels like they talk about decoy a lot. This feels like a decoy situation because you can't have just down the field stretch guys and no possession receivers. So even if Michael Pittman does get out there, I have slight concerns that he's going to be as effective, but like I play him. I still play him as like a wide receiver 3. I'm just not anticipating the ceiling's going to be there. Like
it all depends on who you have. You know what I mean? Like it's hard to say. I would say wide receiver 3. Yeah, that's good. And I would honestly say Josh Downs is borderline wide receiver 3, just because Josh Downs, I think he doesn't get the recognition he deserves. I just think he's a very good real life wide receiver. He's able to get open. And him and Pittman are kind of the same, though, in the sense that they're closer to the line of scrimmage, low A dot, are able to do stuff like they're kind of the same. So I would say, and then you have Alec Pierce. Alec Pierce is just the ultimate dart throw every single week. Like he continues to produce. He's not always, at some point it's going to stop happening because there's no way. They said 21 yards per target, like not even receptions, 21 yards per target right now is where he's currently at. So there's no way he's going to be able to be sustainable with that. But
that's crazy.
You have injuries, buys, like he's a dart throw at the flex play. But running backs, I feel okay with Trey Mason, but he also had 6 receptions last week. He had the touchdown that kind of saved him. A Rich, is he actually going to check the ball down 6, give him 6 receptions? So it's tough.
The upside is just too much to bench for Anthony Richardson. So I have actually on my QB rankings for the week, I have him at number 14 too, which says a lot. I told you whenever we agree, it's a good thing. So has the upside, obviously a big floor as well. And then when it comes to the receivers, I'm with you there. I think that Pittman's a 3. I think Josh Downs is like a 3/flex. And then I don't think Alec Pierce is such a tough start, like you mentioned, because of his inconsistency. So I'm with you there on the receivers. When it comes to running back, though, Trey Sermon, like just dealing with the collarbone stuff this week, I think I would rather leave him out of lineups than put him in at flex. And this doesn't really seem to be a great matchup going up against a tough Tennessee defense. So, and even that for Pittman, like going up against L'Jarius Sneed, like this isn't an ideal situation for this defense that's really shut down other opposing offenses. So coming out of the bye, like I just kind of want to stay away from most of the Colts options when it comes to this. If I had to start, I would start Anthony Richardson, feel good about it. I would start Michael Pittman, feel bad about it. I would start Josh Downs only at flex if I felt like I needed upside. If I could get away with not starting them, I would. A.D. Mitchell, I think, is worth a deep league pickup in case we are getting decoyed by Michael Pittman. And then I think Alec Pierce is more of a stay away or trade away.
So would you play Tank Bigsby or Trey Sermon?
I think for the starting workload, I would still play Trey Sermon, but like it's such a tough start for me because you know that Goodson's back there just, you know, ready to eat up at least a few. So I think kind of where I'm at when it comes to like Trey Sermon is around like right after Najee Harris, like right before we get to the more questionable backfields. I think I'm good with them there. And I just, in my head, I know like it's probably a limited ceiling. Like if he gets a touchdown, cool. If not.
And what I'll say about Najee too, I think Najee now it gets interesting there because, I mean, we keep saying it week in, week out, like this is a good play for Najee. Matchup. But Jaylen Warren did practice. So he may be coming back this week too, which kind of throws a wrench. Because I think if he gets him any kind of juice, like I think that there's a real chance that it's just he doesn't take over, but it's a close split between those two in terms of total touches and workload there. So but
it'll get ugly for sure.
Yeah,
I don't know.
So like Trey Sermon, I agree. I actually have him right next to Najee Harris as well. I do have Tank Bigsby ahead of him just because Tank has at least shown us explosiveness over the past few weeks, and he's got that hot hand, and like sometimes you just continue to ride with that hot hand. But yeah, like and then Justice Hill around him as well, and Braylon Allen. So it's
what do you do? What do you do? Obviously, Anthony Richardson dealing with the injury. What do you do if Anthony Richardson doesn't look right though? Like, you know what I mean? Like, because where I'm at is like I know the upside's there. I think we all can admit we know what the upside looks for Anthony Richardson, but we have seen the floor, and the floor is like a 10-point floor, which for most quarterbacks that's like QB2 range. It's just he provides that QB1 ceiling, and it's like, is this a player that we are, especially knowing Pittman's hurt? To me, it seems like a buy low opportunity, and you might even have it after this game. But I think a lot of people are going to be panicking if he does not play well against Tennessee. Like I could see him being either traded, viewed very differently than he will be going into this weekend if he does not perform well against Tennessee this weekend.
I could see him like being one of those players that gets dropped after this week if he doesn't play well. Tough. Just because it's been a while. Like it truly has been a while since. And you know how the fantasy community gets. They're so reactionary in how they approach it. So he could definitely be one of those players that gets dropped. If I had Anthony Richardson, I have him in a couple leagues. I would just hold, even if he has a down week. And sure, you could say buy low because you probably could get him decently cheap. Like if he has a bad week and Jared Goff has a big week, there could be a chance that you could throw in like Jared Goff for a rich, maybe not straight up, but like
depending on the league, somebody might want that.
Yeah, you could honestly do it. So, and that's something that I would personally do. But yeah, I would just hold on to him. The upside's immense, and it's kind of like people. There was a comment. I went live yesterday, and there was a comment. I forget what the exact comment was, but they're laughing because I had Justin Fields at quarterback 5 or something this week, 6 or something, and I was like, bro. He had a terrible game last week, but he still had 15 fantasy points. Yeah. And it's because like these guys are just able to run the football. Even when they have horrible passing stats, they just have this upside that your pocket passers don't, because if they don't have a good passing day, it's like a 3-point week where these guys, their floor is like a 10-point week, which is bad, but it's not as bad as the other guys could have. So I would just hold and we'll see what happens.
It's funny because like that is, even with Richardson, we're talking about him, like how terrible he's looked. He's had like 10 and 12-point games in the bad games. You know,
those are bad games, right?
Like a Kirk or like a Goff. Sometimes those are like under 10 points when they have that.
Yes, exactly.
Quarterback who's going to have a good game. Josh Allen is going to need a very good game going up against a very tough New York Jets team and is down a lot of weapons right now.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously has not played really good football as of late, like not what we were thinking. And passing wise, it looks like the Diggs effect is real because we haven't seen a whole lot of like big passing games out of Josh Allen.
Mm-hmm.
Couple situations here. We're dealing with a Khalil Shakir injury, who's been his leading target throughout the first 4 games he was, but he could potentially be out this game. And then also who's been sitting out is James Cook, who's missed practice every single day this week. Dealing with the turf toe, it looks like we're probably going to be without him too, Tyler. So with this being a Monday night game, there's going to be a lot of questions like, do I start James Cook and trust that he's there? Do I start Khalil Shakir potentially, or do I even start Josh Allen? Let's start with the James Cook thing because I think that's the most impactful. Talk about it, man. Monday night, turf toe. How are you feeling about James Cook on Monday?
What I always say about these situations when people ask them, and I say that there has to be a backup plan. So if you don't have a backup plan for Monday night, say you're not able to pick up Ray Davis because somebody already has him, even like Ty Johnson, but I wouldn't even like Ty Johnson. But in a desperation part where like, okay, I need somebody because James Cook's officially ruled out, or maybe you have Keon Coleman, somebody that you can just throw in there. If you don't have anybody like that, then I would just start whoever you have going Sunday, even if it's not that great of an option, just because I'd rather have some points. They get to Monday Night Football and I have nobody to drop and I'm stuck just taking a goose egg for James Cook. And I think that James Cook could have a decent week, but you're talking about turf toe. He has a practice. I think might be an ugly game in general with both these teams going at it. Not a whole lot of offense. So I don't even like James Cook that much this week as is. So Tank Dell or not Tank Dell, Tank Bigsby or James Cook. If I have no backup option, honestly, I'd rather just go with Tank Bigsby. But one guy that you could probably pick up, Ty Johnson, I think that you could probably pick him up and just put him at the end of your bench if you really want to play James Cook. And then if he's ruled out, you can just go ahead and start him, or even like Tyler Conklin on the flip side. Just put James Cook in your flex, and then you're able to just throw Tyler Conklin in there, and you have somebody who's at least playing.
It's tough, man, because that's a big spot too. Like, especially if you were counting him in. I think this. If you're in a league with flex, you absolutely need to leave James Cook in your flex if you're planning on playing him. Do not play him in your RB2 spot. Yeah. I would just find the next best option. If you were debating putting him into your flex spot, you mentioned it already. This is going to be a lower scoring game going up against one of the best defenses in the league. And now you're probably at least getting, at best, you're getting split reps. Like even if they say James Cook is fully healthy, they're not going to give him the full workload. Not to mention, there's not a whole lot of really good options. I think you would have to either be in a really shallow league where like a Braylon Allen was available, or like you talked about, a Keon Coleman was available, like somebody, a Ray Davis somehow slips through the cracks and is available, right? Like you would want to have a high upside option. In your 12, 14, 16-man leagues, you got to have a different option ready. Like there's no way I would be waiting on the waiver wire to pick up a Mike Williams or a Tyler Conklin to put in that. Like it's too long of a waiting game. So even if he plays, I think he'll be limited, and who knows if that thing flares up on him on live television. So yeah, I think when it comes to players like that on Monday night, a lot of times I like to know that they're trending the right way, and missing practice for the last 3 days lets us know he's not close. So a lot of concern with James Cook about how long that could be. And this reminds me a lot of like the AJ Brown thing going into Monday night. And we were like, what's going on with AJ Brown? He's not practicing. And then it comes out, it's a week-to-week thing. Turf toe, foot related stuff, that can be like IR type thing. So the team doesn't really, they don't have to make a decision on until later.
Yeah. But I think at least with AJ Brown, I'm pretty sure they gave it to us early. So we didn't have to play that waiting game.
We knew he was out, but then on Monday Night Football was when
when they said multiple weeks.
That's when the announcement was it was going to be a week-to-week thing, and we've got that a couple times.
We didn't have to wait till Monday night to know if he's actually going to play, which I hope Buffalo does that. Like, that's nice because once again, we talk about this. There's money involved in these kind of things. Just fucking tell us. Like, if you know, like, come on, just at least let us know. But, and it's not like, and the last thing I'll say is like, it's not like you're waiting on Jamar Chase or somebody like that. Like, if it was Jamar Chase or a big name player that could blow up, yes. And maybe James Cook can blow up. I just don't think this game script looks good for a big blow up game from him. But if it was somebody like a Jamar Chase or, Justin Jefferson, yeah, I would definitely hold out hope and just pick up somebody just to throw him in last second. But like James Cook, I think that there's a lot of decent options that I would just go ahead, like a Trey Sermon. I would
Trey
just play
Sermon. There's a lot of James Cooks right now on waivers.
Yeah,
Bucky
I would just
Irving
pick him up.
and Tyrone
Yeah.
Tracy and Alexander Madison's and Zach Moss's and Chase Brown's. Like, you have a bunch of fringe guys there. So I wouldn't put all my eggs in the James Cook basket this weekend, especially if you have a viable option. What about a receiver here? Is there anything here receiver-wise? Because obviously the big rumor out there is that Devontae Adams is a potential fit here for this Buffalo team, and I think it'd be a really good fit. But, like, when you start to think Khalil Shakir is probably going to miss this game as well, Keon Coleman, who only had one catch last week, kind of got lucky on the touchdown. He stepped out. We see, like, Mac Hollins will have an occasional catch. Or I thought Curtis Samuel was in a really good bounce back spot. Didn't have any production there. You got MVS on the team. Like, is there any receiver you'd be like, they have a little bit of hope here?
The only way I'd be playing one of the wide receivers is if, like, I had James Cook and then just had to play one of those guys just as an emergency. No, because it's not even like these guys have been playing well. They've honestly been bad, not very good. And then you throw on top of that, this is the New York Jets, who give up one of the fewest points. I think it might be the fewest points to wide receivers so far this season. At least they're up there. I know for sure. So no, I have no interest.
Top 5 right now. Top 5.
Yeah, I have no interest in any of these guys. Even like season long, I'm like,
and you started talking about it and didn't go into it, but you said Josh Allen was a little bit down your ranks. You were mentioning like A-Rich and Justin Fields, and you're like, I kind of have Josh Allen down there. He's going to be affected by this, and I know a lot of his value is tied to like being able to run or be able to score touchdowns. And I do think you need to tear him down, but I don't know if I would tear him outside of like the top 6, just because we know they use him in the red zone, use him in the goal line. He's probably going to be the whole offense this year. When it comes to Josh Allen, man, I still treat him as like a mid-tier to high-end QB1, but he's not. Normally, I rank Josh Allen as like the QB1 or the QB2. I have him down right now at number 5 or 6. I can't remember exactly where I'm at, 5 or 6. But it's getting to that point now where like this, he's not as effective as he has been. He's not throwing the ball very well. And, I think teams can kind of, especially this Jets defense, can kind of key in on Josh Allen and try to let somebody else beat him. I don't know. Is it time to move Josh Allen back to like the back end QB1 radar yet? Are we doing that? I haven't fully got there.
I want to get, I agree. I am just for this week because it is the New York Jets. And I just think it's a really good defense that is going to give him a lot of fits because he just doesn't have, like, if James Cook is out, he has no weapons. And I understand. Me personally, Josh Allen, in my opinion, is the second best quarterback in the NFL. Not just fantasy, the second best quarterback in the NFL. But it's tough when you don't have weapons and you're going up against one of the best defenses in the NFL. Like, you're just hoping that he can be Superman, and maybe he can be. But like, for me personally, you're talking Dak Prescott, Josh Allen. I'd rather play Dak Prescott this week against the Detroit Lions. Kyler Murray, I'm going to play him against Green Bay. That could be a high scoring game. Jordan Love against Arizona. Both those two guys, I'm playing the Justin Fields. I'd rather play Justin Fields this week.
That's
Burrow,
about where it gets kind of tricky right there. Like that.
I'm
Justin
definitely
Fields
playing Joe Burrow right now over Josh Allen. Like, Joe Burrow has been on fire.
So you got Josh Allen outside your top 10 for the week.
He's quarterback 9, and I was having a hard time with Purdy. I didn't put Purdy, but I wish I would have put Purdy because he played really well last night. So, but yeah, Josh Allen's currently my quarterback 9, and that's not to say rest of the season. I think he'll still be fine. Like, just this week, it's a really tough matchup, and things have not looked good the past 2 weeks for this offense. And now you're going up against a divisional opponent with an elite defense. It
doesn't fit very well, but things happen.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if he went out there and tore him up, and he was just Superman because that's just how good he is. Like, we know that's in the range of outcomes because he's one of the best. He's one of the best players in the league, so it can happen.
A couple backfields to talk about: the Bucks and the Bengals, and we have injured running backs at the top, and then upside running backs backing them up. Let's start with the Bucks first. Rachaad White is doubtful to play this week, dealing with the injury. It's kind of been hampering him over the last couple of weeks. It's been an interesting case because we knew Bucky Irving was like starting to chomp at the bit, starting to take a little bit of workload away. But to I think a lot of people surprised, it hasn't just been like Bucky Irving takes over or like Bucky Irving is commanding all of the snaps. It's like the team still really trusts Rachaad White. They've come out and backed him up saying it's going to be a split. Both of these guys are going to be useful. Well, now Rachaad White is out. We had this dilemma a couple weeks ago, and now he's out. So Bucky Irving is going to get his full opportunity against the Saints defense to show what he's made of starting caliber-wise. I think he plays well, and I think this is an opportunity for him to kind of take over this lead role or at least make it more 50-50 than the 60-40, 65-35 that it has been. I think Bucky Irving this week is an RB2. Are you there?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that he'll see a decent amount of work, and he'll be the one area where Rachaad White's definitely holding on to is the receiving down work. Like he's been, and I think this week we'll see Bucky Irving in that role. He's looked good as a pure runner. In my opinion, he's looked much better than Rachaad White has. Rachaad White had a decent week last week though, which was encouraging. But it also is a tough matchup against New Orleans Saints. But I look at this game and just the way that this Tampa Bay offense has really been playing for the whole season. I want to say outside of 1 week against Denver, they had a big stinker, but outside of Denver, like this offense has been very good this year. So for me personally, I think that Bucky Irving's an RB2. I think he'll see a good amount of volume. He'll definitely see the goal line work as well. He's already been kind of seeing the goal line work, even with Rachaad White there. So he'll see the goal line work. So I think he's a really good play this week. Even if Rachaad White's out, I think he's a decent play.
So like when you start looking around, you start looking around, like, because I think Bucky Irving is going to be one of those players where you have other capable options and you're thinking like, do I trust him or do I not? If you have Bucky Irving and maybe you were looking at like Brian Robinson, are you playing Bucky Irving over Brian Robinson Jr.?
I probably would this week just because Brian Robinson is a game time decision. And we saw it last week. He wasn't as involved as he usually is because he just seems banged up. So yeah, I would go with Bucky Irving.
What about dealing with like a Trey Sermon? You going Bucky Irving or Trey Sermon?
I would go with Bucky Irving. I would say like Bucky Irving would honestly be up there. I go with Joe Mixon and he'd be kind of behind there. So for me personally, he'd be like RB18 range. And that's ahead of like Travis Etienne. I would honestly play him over Travis Etienne. But
I got Etienne. I think it's a plus matchup for Etienne. I got Etienne probably higher than you do this week. I got him in top 12.
Yeah.
What about a guy like Rico Dowdle? You know, you playing because I think Rico Dowdle's earned the trust. It's a tough matchup for Rico Dowdle going up against the Lions. It's like, do I play Rico or I think Bucky just provides a little bit more upside than Rico Dowdle does.
I like if Rico Dowdle didn't have the Lions, honestly, I probably would go with Rico because I think Rico is definitely trending up with his snaps and workload. But with that's a brutal matchup, and I would go with Bucky though.
So a couple options there, obviously, like and you know, it's tough because you view starters like he's got to be in the top 24 just for the fact that he's going to have a starter's workload, like has to be. But then you start getting some of these other like backfields where it's a little more convoluted. One of them we've talked about plenty, the Bengals backfield, Zach Moss and Chase Brown. And so this is another one, and I think this one's actually more difficult than the Bucs because Zach Moss is playing. He is banged up, and this was thought to be a high ankle or something that could keep him out for a while. It's not. It's a mild high ankle sprain. He's going to play. But we also saw the effectiveness of Chase Brown over the last couple of weeks. So now it pours a wrench into stuff. Like, is this workload going to be split? Is he going to re-injure or aggravate his injury? And I think there's a lot of question marks with Zach Moss when typically it's been like, we know he's the lead guy. We know Chase Brown is the change of pace back. I still think this week I'd rather start, even though Zach Moss is playing, I've gotten to the point where I think I would still start Chase Brown over Zach Moss this week, just given the upside.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm surprised, honestly, that Zach Moss is playing. I thought for sure he'd be out, so I'm a little shocked. And I didn't think he was going to play. So when I did my rankings, I had Chase Brown as my RB16. I really liked him a lot this week, and that might have even been too low. But for me personally, he would get to the range where Brian Robinson is right now. Currently, like I have Brian Robinson as RB22 this week. So I would put Chase Brown around that range because honestly, I'd rather just take the upside chance with Chase Brown compared to like Rico Dowdle. So for me personally, like he'd be right around there. And Zach Moss, it's interesting just because Zach Moss has honestly dominated specifically the receiving down work is where he's really dominated. But we'll see. Maybe with him being a bit banged up, maybe he seeds a little bit more work to um, Chase Brown this week. But I would still have him into my top 30. Zach Moss, that is. But yeah, I would rather play Chase Brown over Zach Moss this week.
Yeah, I have Chase Brown a few spots higher than Zach Moss. Zach Moss is like right on the outskirt of my top 30 as well. And I'm probably moving down because I have Ray Davis still a little bit further down. So I think I put Ray Davis over him. But it's one of those situations where, like, if you have Zach Moss, it's a tough start over some of these other backs because there's the high injury risk. And there's the fact that, like, they're playing a Giants defense that actually has been playing pretty well as of late as well. So, you know, when I look at Zach Moss, I'm like, do I start him or Alexander Madison, right? Alexander Madison in a tough matchup against the Steelers. And I almost rather start Madison because I know the guaranteed workload is there. Well, Zamir White did return to practice, but it's assumed that Alexander Madison is going to take the workload. So that's a tough one for me. I think Alexander Madison provides a little bit more upside in the passing game, situational like that. So I think when it comes to Zach Moss, you have to either have no other option or you have to have a really strong team around Zach Moss to consider starting him because he's a touchdown or bust option.
No, I would agree with that.
Yeah. What about, and you said Chase Brown. So are you taking Chase Brown over, you said ETN was a little lower. Are you starting Chase Brown over Travis Etienne?
No, I would start ETN over Chase Brown.
I got ETN over Chase Brown. Are you starting Chase Brown or DeAndre Swift?
DeAndre Swift.
Still going DeAndre Swift as well. Are you starting Chase Brown or J.K. Dobbins?
I have J.K. higher.
I got J.K. higher as well. Are you starting Chase Brown or Javonte Williams?
That's right where he would be. So if I had to pick one, I would go with Chase Brown, but that's really close.
I got Javonte right ahead of him, and I agree it's close. You got Chase Brown or are you starting Rico Dabo?
I would go Chase Brown just because
I go Chase Brown too.
The upside.
Chase Brown or Najee Harris?
I'm not trusting Najee. I just don't see how you can, man. Like, it's been 2 good match and he hasn't done anything, and it's just, I don't know.
It's a tough one, bro. That's one of the harder calls right now. That Najee Harris thing. It's like because you, like, I'd be wanting to buy into matchups.
Yeah, he's seeing work and it's good matchups, but he literally can't do anything with it. So I'm glad. Hopefully Jalen Warren plays this week, and I hope that they're not rushing him back because Najee hasn't done a whole lot. They're like, man, we really need to get something going here. And then next thing you know, Jalen Warren's out again and he goes on IR. So I think
like Justin Fields opened things up for him. Like normally rushing quarterbacks open lanes up, and it feels like he's still
man. When he was out there in that Indianapolis Colts game, Cordell Patterson looked better than Najee. And I'm sorry, like I like Najee. I'm a Steelers fan, but Najee he doesn't have that juice.
Najee's a tryhard.
He is a tryhard. He's like David Pierce. Honestly, he really is. And then sometimes he's not even a tryhard. He's like back there trying to juke, and it's like, bro, fucking lower that shoulder. Get going, north and south, baby. Like, let's go. So
I hate to say it, but it's fucking true, bro.
It is. Honestly, on that note too, I think that Jalen Warren kind of becomes like we're not talking, but I think he's kind of like this little bit of a buy low because I do think there's a real chance he's the guy that they prefer in this backfield. If Najee's not getting anything going, like how long can you honestly wait and continue to give him touches if nothing's happening? Like, you got to get something going on the ground here. So Jalen Warren's a little interesting, and I don't think he would cost that much either.
No, I think you can get him for the low right now. The only thing
I've seen him dropped.
If you would have got him last week, you probably would have got a better price tag on him.
Yeah, agreed.
So I think people are starting to sense that, like, oh shit, Najee's not playing well. Like, there's a chance Jalen Warren could take over. And we know he gets the passing game work. All we would need to see is like a 50-50 split, and he's on the flex radar most weeks.
Yeah.
Maybe even RB3. All right, let's move on to obviously the team that the Bengals are playing on Sunday night, the New York Giants. And a lot of complications here as well. You will have to make some tough decisions on your lineup. Malik Neighbors, with 10 days rest, I thought for sure he would be playing in this game and dealing with the concussion still. He will not be playing this weekend, which is a surprise, to a lot of people. He was a top 3 receiver before he got hurt. But he will not be playing. So we will see more of the Darius Slayton and all the other receivers that the Giants have to offer. And we've also talked about the running back Devin Singletary, a limited practice, could be playing, could be not. We'll have to make sure he is playing. Looks like he's on track to play.
Mm-hmm.
Affects a lot of things here. Your Wan'Dale Robinson start, it affects that. Your Darius Slayton start, it affects that. Your Tyrone Tracy start, it affects that. Talk about Devin Singletary first before we get into the receivers. If he plays, do you still view Tyrone Tracy the same way, or are you downgrading him?
I would downgrade him a little bit, but I do think Tyrone Tracy looked good. And there's this I forget what his name is. But I listen to the New York Stock Exchange is what they're called. And there's a guy, they watch film, they break down film, and they're really good in the pre-draft process. But it was really funny because they were talking about the New York Giants this weekend. And one of them was like, hey, that's what happens when you give your best running back on the roster the football. He goes out there and he produces. I do. And we've talked about Tyrone Tracy even before the season started.
Yep.
I think that Tyrone Tracy is the best running back on this roster. I do. And I think that game last week, he's a rookie. They always start a little bit slow, get him comfortable. I think he looked really comfortable out there. I really think he's going to push Devin Singletary. And if Devin Singletary plays this week, I think it's going to be really close in terms of timeshare and snaps and touches. I still would downgrade him, though, just because he wouldn't be the lead guy. If he is the lead guy, he's an RB2, 100% for me this week. But if Devin Singletary, he'd probably still be like probably near RB 30-ish range, just because those two guys, I still think that Devin Singletary will play a role. It wouldn't be 100%, but I like, he's a guy that I would definitely not drop and just see how it continues to play out here, and a guy that I would just continue to stash.
This is eerily similar to the Bengals scenario for me, where the starter is going to play banged up, could get re-injured, maybe not full workload, and the backup looks like they have way more juice. At least right now they do. Chase Brown, Moss, Tyrone Tracy, and Devin Singletary. And I would start Tyrone Tracy over Devin Singletary, who for me, it's, the back end option. The only thing is I'd want to hear how Brian Dable says it, like, yo, he's a full go, he's ready to go. Maybe he's limited snap-wise, but I feel more confident with Tracy than I do with Singletary, who I think is limited. The only thing is he's been their guy. That's the one caveat, and it's tough to say, like, they're just going to give the role to Tyrone Tracy just because he looked good. But if he gets 10 to 12 carries, I would trust that more than I trust the 10 to 12 carries for Devin Singletary. I just would. And so it's not typically a thing I do. Like, normally I trust the guy that's the starter, but the upside here feels like it's there for Tracy and for Chase Brown. Specifically, though, for Tyrone Tracy, who, if he does take over and he's more effective in this role, that's a permanent switch.
Yeah.
Even if it's a 60-40, 55-45, it becomes a permanent move now, at least for the rest of the season. So, me personally, I think Tracy is worth the start. He's a top 24 option for me this week. Like, I would start him over Trey Sermon. I just think that there's a little bit more upside.
I think it just provides more juice, like you were saying, than Trey Sermon does. And yeah, I mean, I'm okay with that. He's somebody I have a lot of, so hopefully it plays out.
What about like Singletary, right? So you talked about Singletary for a second, and it's like he's going to go right there with some of those other questionable starts. Your, maybe Ray Davis we're talking about, or the backups that play well, like your Braylon Allen, your Tank Bigsby, Tajay Spears. Are you playing them over guys like that, or are you pushing them down below those players with the upside of Braylon Allen, a Tank Bigsby, etc.?
I would probably it's tough because the Cincinnati defense has also just not been good, and this could be a game that I still don't trust the Giants, but they're playing good football. I mean, they beat the Seahawks last week, and I thought that they had no chance. So went out there, they beat them. Like, they're able to move the football, even though without Malik Neighbors. I probably would just, honestly, I would go with Tank Bigsby, though, and those kind of guys. Maybe I would play him. Braylon Allen's interesting because it's the Bills, and this has been, a defense that has given up the most points of running backs so far this season. So it's close there, but I will say with Devin Singletary, I still think he sees decent work. Like you said, I don't think Tyrone Tracy is just going to overtake him. Like, he'll still see decent work. I think he's going to lose some of the work he was seeing early season, for sure. But yeah, it gets tough, and because Tajay is another guy that he has a really good matchup too. I just
against the Colts.
I like that upside. Yeah, like with him too. So I probably would go with like those two kind of guys, but then it would be Devin Singletary after them.
Yeah, but this is the part, right? This is the tough decisions we have to make, especially in that flex spot. Like there's a couple different options fringe wise. And for some of these running backs, I think it's okay to look at like receiver too, because receiver typically has more upside. It's just a little bit more floor. Lower floor that you have to take the risk with. But as far as these Giants receivers, like obviously Malik Neighbors is a big part of like just making the season a special season so far for the Giants. They've been playing really well. But now you got these guys, your Wan'Dale Robinsons, your Darius Slaytons. There's obviously like not a whole lot here. Are you comfortable starting Wan'Dale Robinson as your wide receiver 3 in your 3 receiver leagues? Or are you looking at him as more of a flex option? Like, because for me, I feel like the floor is there. There's just typically, I'm not saying it can't happen. Typically, there ain't a whole lot of upside outside of like 8 catches for 50 yards.
For me, though, yeah. And that's honestly what it's probably going to be. So if you're in a full point PPR league, I don't mind that. Even like half point, sure. I think I would say definitely in a full point PPR league, he's a wide receiver 3, just because he's going to see volume. It's not going to be down the field. But the other thing too, once again, Cincinnati's been dreadful defensively.
Yes.
Have not really been able to given up so many points, can't stop anybody right now. So he's a guy that, and half point, full point, especially like a wide receiver 3 for me, for sure. I would feel okay playing him in the flex as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's a safe guy. Like
he's safe.
Like 10 to 12
volume.
point type play, because he's going to get like 6 to 8 catches. Like that's just part of the game plan right now for him. It may not go for a whole lot of yards.
No, it won't. It'll be like like you said, 8 catches, 50 yards. That's probably what he's going to end up with.
3/4 of the but yes, so I think that it's good. Like he's a good flex option. What about Darius Slayton though? Because he offers a little bit more like upside, I would say, than a Wan'Dale Robinson, a guy they'll use in the red zone, a guy who's been pretty much, it seems, wide receiver 1 over the last 3-4 seasons. It feels like, and has a role. And I think Danny Dimes trusts him in a game against. We talk about like this Bengals defense has just been kind of putrid lately. Like, is he a flex? Is he a wide receiver 3? Because I think he's on the flex radar. That's where I got him on the flex radar.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, last week he kind of blew up. He had 8 catches for 122 yards. He was good. And is that going to happen every single week? No, but he's always kind of been this big play type of guy throughout his entire career. And it's something where, there's some lineups I'm looking at this week for me that I'm like decimated, not just without people to play, because I have guys on bye, also injuries, and I'm like scraping the bottom of the barrel where I'm already kind of projected to lose. And I think Darius Slayton is like that interesting kind of guy where there's risk and reward there, high risk, high reward, where right. I'm okay with throwing him in my flex play, especially if I'm kind of like an underdog, because I do think he offers a lot of upside, because if he has 2 long catches and could score a touchdown, which I think he's the type of player that offers that. And especially like, once again, Cincinnati hasn't been able to stop anybody. So I think that there's things to definitely like, but just know that you could be at risk for an absolute dud, but I'm okay with that. Like fantasy, that's what fantasy's about.
I kind of feel like, and there was a lot of pickups this week too at the receiver position, right? You talk about guys like Darnell Mooney was picked up, and like Jalen Tolbert was picked up. Obviously, Juju's on a bye, but like when I start thinking of what Darius Slayton offers floor-wise even and upside-wise, now you go to a Jalen Tolbert, and I'm like, I think Slayton offers a little bit more than a Jalen Tolbert this week specifically. He offers a little bit more consistency, I would say, than like a Darnell Mooney offers. So even though it might not seem like the best start, he's kind of one of those players that he's going to be somewhere around like 5 catches, 70 yards with the potential score. So I think he's right there on like the flex, damn near at the wide receiver 3 level, but like just outside of it for me, where I feel good about him being in the lineup, as opposed to like, I think I'm starting him because I don't have any better options. So
yeah,
I don't know. Like, would you start him or would you start like a Keon Coleman?
I would go with him. I would just
Darius
take
Slayton. What about Darius Slayton or like a Christian Kirk?
Probably Christian Kirk, but that's close. I think Christian Kirk is probably a little bit safer, but yes. I would say too with Christian Kirk though, it's going to be interesting because isn't Evan Ingram coming back this week?
Yes, Evan Ingram's supposed to be coming back. I don't know. They've been close the last few weeks.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I haven't actually looked at him today at all, so I'm gonna look at it
I think
right
he's
now.
trending in the right direction according to Doug Peterson.
Yeah, he's
would you start him or would you start Ladd McConkey?
I would go with Slayton. I don't like Ladd this week. I like Ladd season long, but this week definitely not. Denver's been just so elite
against that secondary. Yeah. All right, well, moving on, man. Team we do not talk about a lot. We did for the first time actually earlier this week. The New England Patriots. They have some news going on, bro. Yeah. Drake May obviously starting in. This is a big change too, right? Like we talk about I think the whole theme of this show, it seems like, is like complicated scenarios you're gonna have to go through. And Drake May, obviously in super flex, you're probably desperate if you have to start him, but it does something for this offense now because under Jacoby Brissett, we knew it was very limited. We don't know what it's going to look like with Drake May. It could still be limited, but the ceiling now was a lot higher. When we talk about these receivers, right? There's a bunch of receivers on this New England team. You have Jalen Polk, who's the rookie, second-round pick. You have Kendrick Bourne, who just came off of the PUP list, so he is now active and playing. You also have KJ Osborne, who was the free agent addition. You have DeMario Douglas, who's been like the solid wide receiver, PPR, Wan'Dale Robinson type for this team. So you have four really kind of mysterious options here. And I think we can both agree, like if Drake May hits, one of these guys is going to be useful in fantasy lineups. The obvious choice here is Jalen Polk. Talk me into why you think that is, if you agree.
I don't agree, to be honest.
You don't agree?
No, I like Pop Douglas. And the reason why I like Pop Douglas is, so the problem that I have with Jalen Polk coming out of college,
because you were a big Jalen Polk guy.
I don't want to say I was big. I reckon I'm a bigger. All right, honestly, I'm a bigger Javon Baker. And Javon Baker must not be good or else he'd be playing here. So, yeah. But I just think like Javon Baker offered the upside because Javon Baker, in my opinion, is just the most explosive wide receiver that they have. And I think Drake May will take those kind of shots, and that's what you want. So he offers that. But for me personally, like since Javon Baker's not even suiting up, you can't pick him up. So for me, Pop Douglas. And the reason why Pop Douglas is like, okay, so talk about Nico Collins just a tiny bit. Like I liked Nico Collins a lot last year because when I do my weekly takeaways, I started to see like Nico Collins' target increase his second year, and he was out targeting Brandon Cooks for a little bit, and then he ended up getting hurt and was out for the rest of the season. But you could start to see like a mini breakout. Last year, DeMario Douglas, like he was breaking out. I know it wasn't big fantasy points because it was New England, for God's sake. This team was so bad, especially passing. They were so bad last year. But he was dominating the pass. Like he was seeing a good target share. And for me personally, I'm a big target share believer. If you can get open the NFL and command targets, you earn targets. They're not given to you. Pop Douglas was earning targets last year. So for me personally, and he's kind of the guy I would say isn't the favorite. Like everybody wants Jalen Polk and everybody's kind of picking up Jalen Polk. So he's the guy that's kind of like flying under the radar that for me personally, he's the guy that I would want going forward because I think that I just think he's a good separator and he kind of showed it last year, even though they weren't big numbers. In the advanced analytics, he was a good separator.
The only problem I have with Pop Douglas is that he reminds me of like the New England
like
version.
You said, Wan'Dale.
It's Wan'Dale. It's the same player, bro. It is like Greg Dortch.
I would say Jalen Polk is kind of like that. Jalen Polk is not a guy who's going to really get down. He's not a burner. He's going to be a close to line of scrimmage kind of guy as well.
Yeah, but more so in a way that's not like, what I'm saying, you're just throwing bubble screens the whole time to him and a lot of their
Pop Douglas had a big reception last week.
He did. And I hear you. And I just think that, unfortunately, I think it's going to be spread out. But you just know that
that's
one of these guys
hits too.
One of these guys is going to be his favorites. And the thing is, like, when you play with the second team a lot, you end up finding a guy on the second team that you like. And I'm not a big Jalen Polk guy at all, but I know Jalen Polk was playing with the second team to start camp. I think he worked his way up as the camp went on. But I know he was playing with the second team and probably had a chance to establish some chemistry when KJ Osborne and Pop Douglas were playing with the first team. So I think, it's a tough thing because I don't know that any one of these guys becomes more than a flex. It's just there's a strong possibility that somebody becomes playable on this team. And I think Jalen Polk just offers the most. I think Pop Douglas is probably the easiest flex right now out of them.
Yeah.
But I feel like if there was somebody I was going to take a gamble on, it'd be a week or two of Jalen Polk, and then shit, if he misses, we're out on him.
No, I agree.
Kendrick Bourne is also interesting though, because he's the one that they paid. He's the one that's the better. Like out of the talent on this team, he's the best talent. So it's an interesting case because there's a possibility where like he's the leading receiver on this team, and we're getting him at a discount. I want to say he was the leading receiver 2 years ago before he got hurt. Right? Or maybe last season, even before he got hurt, he was the number 1 receiver on this team. So I think Kendrick Bourne is also a very interesting name. I haven't bought any of them. I haven't like picked him up at all, but he's just an interesting name because if they do make him the focal point of the offense, if he is the best receiver, which on the surface, it seems like that, if he's the best receiver coming off this injury, then shit, maybe we might be getting a wide receiver 3 for free.
No love for no BS hero KJ Osborne. Last year, not to throw any shade at no BS, but I always thought the take was really funny. And his preseason takes, he was like, KJ Osborne's going to average at least 9 fantasy points per game. And I'm like, bro, that's not even somebody that you should roster. Like, that's not a good take. Like, what are you saying there? Like, KJ Osborne's
even if he got 9 points a game, like it's 9 points a fucking game. Like
that's horrible. So yeah, like I would, the only guys I'd really be interested is Polk. I think Hunter Henry is also kind of interesting just because the tight end position is so bad. And I think that Hunter Henry's a good player. It's just, he's been on this team and it's been so bad. So if Drake May's able to hit, like you said, there's going to be definitely a guy. And I think that it could be Hunter Henry. And once again, the tight end position is just so awful as well that, hey, he could be a guy in a couple weeks.
The one thing I like about Hunter Henry is how are you getting outproduced every other week by Austin Hooper?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. And it's not outproduced is an overstatement because it's like 19 yards.
Yeah, it's
28 yards.
It's just hard to judge. That this offense has been ass. Oh my god.
It's terrible, bro. We talked
since
a lot
Tom
about
Brady
the Pats this week. I didn't think we was going to talk this much about the Pats, but obviously
they're in offense, honestly, because Drake May just brings this uncertainty. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it brings a little intrigue, like a little bit of upside, because even like the running back situation right now is a little bit fluid with Rhamondre Stevenson being out this week. But we get Antonio Gibson now, who last week we thought he was going to be the starter because Rhamondre was fumbling. Now he's a starter because Rhamondre's hurt. And it's just kind of this nature of fantasy this season. Like last year, we dealt with the quarterback. It was the injuries to the quarterback. And it feels like this year is like the year of the complicated running back, where we're just getting a whole bunch of situations where players are either hurt, depth charts are changing right now pretty early in the fucking season. And we get Antonio Gibson starting here. I would treat him as an RB2 for this week because of the pass catching upside. We've seen some big pass catching weeks out of Gibson. And obviously with Drake May starting, you have to protect your quarterback through the run game. So for me, Tyler, I look at this and I look at a situation where you're getting a spot start out of a guy who has a really nice floor. You don't get this very often, even if it's for just 1 week.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. He should see majority of the work. I think that Hasty is a guy. I think it's Hasty behind him.
Is Michael Hasty?
Yeah, who's like in a super, super deep league. Sure. But this week, yeah, Antonio Gibson, I would say, is a top 24 play, and largely because you have injuries, you have people on bye, and he's just a guy that guarantee workload. Like, that you're going to get work, and hey, maybe it ends up to just a dud fantasy week. But these are people always get mad when you recommend these types of players and they have dud weeks. But it's like it's a process play. The reason why you're going with this kind of guy is because that they're going to see work, and the work doesn't always lead to fantasy points because it could be 10 carries for 20 yards. Like it could be and a couple catches for 6 yards, but he could score a touchdown. He could rip one of these off, and it's just how it goes. So yeah, for me personally, I think the workload will be there. He's a top 24 back. He's a guy that I'm okay with starting as an RB2, definitely in my flex for sure. So I like him this week, and we'll see how it goes.
The one difference between Antonio Gibson is we've seen him do it, though. Like, even over a guy like a Trey Sermon or you're starting or Ray Davis, like, we have seen Antonio Gibson be an RB2 level type player with upside. Like, we thought there was a time where he was going to be the next Christian McCaffrey, was like what the coaching staff was saying. And so it's like he's produced. We've seen this year he's got the volume catching wise. So you pair that up with 12 carries and 3 catches. That's a 15 touch workload. I think that would be the spot for any RB2. So even if he didn't perform, he had 50 total yards. I think you couldn't be upset with the play because this is the situation that you want versus like even a Rico Dowdle against Detroit. Like,
no, 100%. I think that those two are very similar. If Rico Dowdle had a better matchup, I would probably go with him just because I like that offense a lot more. But yeah, like I would say he's right there and like definitely over guy Tank Bigsby for sure because you know that you're going to get more work and like better quality work than Tank, where Tank's this guy who could end up going out there and have like 5 carries and it goes for 5 yards. And I think this coaching staff is like, all right, let's go back to Travis. And then you see a lot of Travis and Tank kind of falls down. So I do like Tank, but like that's a kind of guy. Or Najee Harris. I'm sorry, I'm not trusting Najee Harris. I'm going to go with Antonio Gibson over.
Oh, I'm not there yet. I can't get there yet. I still got him over Antonio Gibson.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Oh man, come on. You got.
I think I have like 23 and 24, man. It's
right
like,
back to back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a tough spot, man. And I know it's going to be a tough situation. Like a lot of people watching right now are going to have a lot of tough decisions. And if you have these decisions in your lineup, just know it can play out a number of different ways. Like don't be so stressing on these decisions because just because a person gets 15 touches, we don't know exactly what that looks like on any given weekend. So no, it's not. You're not the only person going through this. And then lastly, obviously, the Houston Texans. We touched on this the other day. Nico Collins going on IR officially. I think since the last time we covered this, he is on IR, will miss 4 games. And so obviously a bump up for Tank Dell, a bump up for Stephon Diggs in their roles. But there's also another receiver here that's been a pretty popular pickup this weekend, Xavier Hutchinson, who's going to serve as the wide receiver 3, had a strong game last week. I thought John Mechie would get an opportunity as well, but it seems like Hutchinson's the guy that's going to at least have an opportunity here. Do you think he's on the flex radar yet, or are you still leaving him on your bench?
I'd probably leave him on just because there's some pretty good, I don't want to say good running back flex plays, but there's decent running back flex plays that are interesting. So I would probably leave him on my bench. But yeah, he's a guy that if I had a roster spot, I don't mind picking him up just because it's a Houston Texans offense. We know that it's explosive with CJ Stroud under center. And you know, Tank Dell, I had high hopes for him, but he hasn't been particularly great this year. I think he'll get better, but you know, we'll see. And Hutchinson, I want to say even out targeted him last week. So, or at least when he came in, he out targeted him. So, I think he's somebody I would pick up and just see how it plays out.
Maybe CJ Stroud just thinks he looks downfield and he's like, oh, that's Nico Collins down there. He's just targeting him the same way. But like when you start thinking of like some of the similar type spots, I think there's a solid like 35 to 40 receivers. And then now Xavier Hutchinson is like now in that range because you're talking about players who do have question marks, guys that were like considering starting. He's in that, like, to me, he's right behind like your Keon Coleman's and your Dontavian Wicks and your Alec Pierce's. Like he offers a very similar amount of questions. But I do think the one thing I can say is like this matchup might be favorable depending on what the New England Patriots do with Christian Gonzalez. If they allow him to shadow either a Tank Dell or a Stephon Diggs, there might be some additional opportunity now for Hutchinson. I don't want to overstate it and say that he's going to be like this 8-target guy, but I think that this is a player that I would want to at least have on the roster. I wouldn't want to leave him on free agency just to see what happens because we are without Nico for 4 weeks.
Yeah, at least. I mean, you think it's going to be 4? Hey, you never know.
I mean, he's IR. So you could be 6, 7, 8. So, and then lastly, the running back situation got a little bit more crowded. Obviously, we've been trusting Cam Akers for the last 2 weeks as like a mediocre flex play, RB3 type play, just because of pure volume. Like we talked about, the volume sometimes it speaks. But now we get the return of Dameon Pierce. He is healthy. Oh, and guess who else we get? We get Joe Mixon now back as well, who is expected to play this week. So this backfield, which was Joe Mixon's getting 30 carries a game, heavy workload. Then he gets injured after 2 games. Dameon Pierce, he's hurt. We don't know when he's going to come back. Oh, Cam Akers, he performed well in the preseason. He still looks rusty. This is a complicated mess. I still think Joe Mixon is the lead back here, and they give him opportunities this game against New England. Do I think it's 25, 30 carries? Absolutely not. But getting 15 carries, 15 touches, I'll say, in this game seems likely. I still have him as a top 15 play. I am not interested at all. Cam Akers can go to waivers. Dameon Pierce is not worth the flex spot.
No, I agree. I would be playing Joe Mixon if I had him. And sure, if he doesn't see a big workload, I'm fine with that because I think that he'll see a decent enough workload that will warrant RB2 production. I think that honestly, yeah, and all the other guys, I don't want to roster any of them. The only other guy that I think would be that I would want to, I don't even think like Damian Pierce is. Dare's the only one because I wouldn't even want to roster Dare, but Dare I just think has the role of like a pass catching back. Like he's the only kind of guy. I don't think that Damian Pierce would even play pass catching downs. I don't think
No,
he's like that kind of guy. So
they might use his ass on special teams.
it's honestly, so there's the only one that if anything were to happen to Joe Mixon again, right? Like we saw it. I don't even want to pick up Damian Pierce. I would rather have Dare just because I think that Dare, once again, the pass catching role, and they clearly like him in that role. So he's the only guy. But yeah, Joe Mixon definitely play him this week if I had him.
I play him this week, and I treat him as a top 12. Like maybe you don't see the ceiling of like 30 carries, 150 yards, 3 touchdowns, but this is still a player who can score a touchdown. They'll use him in the red zone, and you're also going to get a couple opportunities at catches, probably a few targets this game as well with him in the passing game. So I think if you're questioning, like, do I start Joe Mixon? I don't think this is a player you question. I'm starting him over guys like Tony Pollard, Chuba Hubbard, DeAndre Swift. I'm still trusting him as a top 12 asset.
He's right in there. Yeah.
Yeah, I got him ranked at number 11 right now. So
I have him 13.
13. So right around the same territory. Trust him in your lineups. Before we get into it, man, any other start sit things? Because I know we touched on this mentality-wise. It's like, look, you can't always – you go through the week, you look at the matchups, you trust your judgment, and then 5 minutes beforehand, you either get a piece of information or an inkling. You're like, no, I'd rather start this player instead. How are you with that? Because to me, I'm like, you know what? Start your guys. You put trust in it all week. You've identified the matchups. Trust your gut.
So I used to go in and tinker like to the minute. And last week I did that. It was like the first time I did that in a long time, and it ended up burning me. Like as the years have progressed, I've just been kind of like, I do my homework early. Sure, things can change because players get hurt, but I have my process throughout the week just leads me to who I want to be playing, and I don't usually go in there last minute and change it. So I will say one thing too. Hey, just real quick. Hey, Isaac Garendo, huh?
Yo, that intuition.
But I want to say this, right? And I think this is really important because I think it's leagues that don't lock, not all leagues lock their rosters for Thursday night players. So you can drop them after they played, but you can't add them. Not all leagues are like that. A lot of leagues also lock it, so you're locked in. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is, I had a little bit of intuition, and that we talked about intuition, right? It's just something like there's just something that you just feel it, and like with Isaac Garendo, and I didn't believe like Jordan Mason was actually going to get hurt, but he was leading the league in touches. They gave him a ton of work, and he could be back next week. And I don't even know if it'd be Isaac Garendo because he just had one carry at the end of the game that really inflated his numbers. But the point of what I'm trying to say is, if you are in a league that you're able to drop players after Thursday night football, there's no reason to not be adding backup running backs that are playing on Thursday night football because of that reason. Like, it's just, then you don't have to wait to try to get them on waivers. And then you're just able to drop them right after the game. Oh, the running back didn't get hurt. All right, tossed out, pick up a new guy. Like, that should be stuff that everybody should be doing, and they don't do. Like, even in my cutthroat leagues, people aren't even doing that kind of stuff. I do it all the time just because that, like, it's stuff that you should be doing that gives you a slight advantage. Not every single week you're going to hit on it, but you could. And it's just something that's easy to do and costs nothing to do.
You know, I've never thought of that. And I've been playing this game for a very long time. And I claim, you know what I'm saying? I have a lot of claims about how good I am as a player. I've never thought about that. That's a really good point because at the end of the day, it gives you upside, right? Like, especially if you have a starter that you're like, I don't even know if I really want to start this guy, or I don't know if I want to roster this guy. Now you have a free spot. If there's somebody you were thinking of picking up, chances are if they clear waivers, you're going to be able to get them anyway. So you pick up a Garendo and say he goes for 0 yards, you cut him for the player that you were gonna get anyway. That's a hell of a point, man, because I typically do that with like my Monday night guys. I wait all the way till Monday, and then people who are on bye weeks, they don't lock until the Monday game starts. So I normally identify a couple key pieces that I like, that players that are on bye, like say Raheem Mostert got dropped. I'm thinking in my head, okay, I know if anybody on this team that I picked up and they're not like a player that I was invested in, or like if they have a bad game, I would drop them. I know I have a player ready to go, whether it's a player or a defense, even for the next week. So say I really liked a defense for the next week. I use my Monday night, but I've never thought of the Thursday night, bro. That's a gem right there, dog.
Yeah, I do it. I don't want to say I do it every single time, because there's some weeks that's just like I don't care who the backup is, or people could already have the backup, so you're just kind of stuck and nobody pick up. But yeah, it's something where, especially for the 49ers, because you know how good this team is running the football, that I would be picking players up every single week, and you, like I said, once again, you can just drop them. And one thing I did too, and this is another point that I want to say, I had Mike Gesicki because I have Travis Kelce, so I had like Mike Gesicki's the best on waivers. I dropped Mike Gesicki because like even a defense, because that's not good, and maybe you picked up for the week you're trying to stream, like drop them just for the extra spot. Because if the starting running back goes down, that guy's way more valuable than your kicker or your defense, unless you have like Brandon Aubrey, then I don't know, maybe. But like I want to drop him. But if it's some kicker that's like kicking 12th right now, like who the hell cares? You can have that running back who has way more value if the starter gets hurt. So
I use, and this probably lead to a further conversation. I use my defense and kicker spots as weapons. Like I'll drop a defense and just play where most of the time your defense is going to get you between 5 and 8 points. Like most standard defenses are 5 to 8 points. That's just how it works. And if I can drop that and pick up somebody who's in a very similar situation, a fantasy-friendly situation, maybe it's not the best defense, but in a 12-team leagues, there's not more than 20 defenses rostered. There's 12 defenses out there. You can find one that gets you 5 points that has some upside. Get rid of the defense, pick up a player with the upside. I really like that strategy, Tyler. And like I said, that's one of those gems that, that's one you had in your bag that not a lot of people will remember. So good shit.
And you know what kind of pissed me off too, man? This is another thing, like just go with your gut, because I was going to make a video. I had Isaac Arendo and I was going to talk about this, and I decided not to do it. And I was like, fuck it. I don't think it'll get that many views or whatever. I guarantee that would have blown up just because of like after the fact. Like it probably wouldn't have done that well at first, but then everybody would have been like, oh shit, he's right. It actually happened. He got hurt. So it kind of pisses me off that I didn't, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about so much though, like you can't do every take. But that was one you had a hunch about. You talked about it, you mentioned it, you picked him up. So that was good shit, bro. I'm sure we'll have more. That was, to me, the player I did that with earlier was like Xavier Legette. And it hasn't worked the same way, but I was like, after I saw the first game, I was like, oh shit.
I still think he has upside.
I think he's going to be a second half guy.
Yeah, I still think he has that upside. He's banged up, right? He got hurt.
He got banged up this last. He's going to play though.
Yeah, he's going to play this week. Yeah, so there's still a chance with him. I think he's somebody that should be rostered as well.
Yeah, we're talking about. I mean, we gave love to Brian Thomas and Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors already. I don't know if Andy Dalton looks the way he has been. I could just see him being an asset for us down the second half.
Agreed.
All right. Well, good shit, man. We got some extra gems I wasn't expecting here. Tyler, appreciate you tapping in, man. We will be back here next week as always. We'll see you on the next one.